So moving on to the final segment of this particular session, and we're going to be diving into examples of a few different companies who are doing some incredible things in the space of the circular economy. Joining me here today, first, I'm going to go in no particular order. We've got one live in the studio and a couple people joining us remotely. But joining us here, we've got, let's see who comes up first. So we've got Pierre, who is the CEO of Nopla, which is an edible packaging company. We've also got joining us remotely, Carmen, who is the founder and Chief Innovation Executive Officer at Ananas and Anam. My mouth is full with so many A's today. And also the European Inventor Award finalist for Pintex, which is a natural plant-based material made from pineapple. And last but absolutely not least, joining us here in the studio, we've got 24-year-old founder and CEO of Zeta Shoes. So thank you. Welcome to this segment. Hello, wonderful. It's wonderful to have all of you here and very exciting times indeed. Now, there's so much going on right now in terms of the particular work that each of you are doing. You've got such inventive solutions in terms of the circular economy, and I probably didn't do them sufficient justice in the introduction. So Pierre, would you like to start by kicking us off and telling us a little bit more about the work that you're doing?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. So Nopla, we are a sustainable packaging startup based in London, and we develop alternatives to single-use plastic using seaweed. We think it's a material that has a huge potential in terms of the circular economy because it's such a renewable resource, but also has a very easy end of life. It's been around for 100 million years, so wherever it might end up, it's not going to create long-lasting waste. And we've been using seaweed for creating a few different solutions to single-use, kind of like on-the-go consumption. So our first product was a little bubble that contained liquids. And in that case, you can literally eat the packaging. It's a bit like eating a fruit. And we've been using this for hydration at marathons. We've been using it for cocktails at festivals, and more recently launching it for doses of ketchup and mayo for the takeaway kind of market. And realizing the potential of seaweed, we've started to apply our seaweed as a coating onto cardboard for food boxes. So we're launching a food box for takeaway just in the UK, as well as future applications such as kind of like sachets and bags for dry products. So we think that seaweed has a lot of potential for being a substitute for a lot of the kind of like the more disposable solutions out there.
Wow, seaweed as packaging. So Laure, tell us a little bit about what you're doing. Are you wearing the shoes?
Of course I am. I'm promoting them.
So tell us a little bit more about your shoes and the product that you've created.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm the happy founder of Zeta. Zeta is a zero-waste sneakers brand made exclusively from recycled, recyclable and vegan materials, such as grape waste, recycled plastic, recycled cork or rubber. The shoes are ethically made in Portugal, in a small factory. And as we didn't want that pair of shoes to be an additional waste at the end of the cycle, we proposed to recycle them for free in a sorting plant in order to create a second life to be green combustible, green fuel.
So you have literally taken the recycling concept to like a whole nother level. So the materials are recycled, and then the shoes at the end, when you finish using them or they get to the point, you can't wear shoes forever, then they're recycled again. Carmen, you are using pineapple to create something that's similar to leather. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, thank you, Lovelda, and thank you, Change Now, for having me there. Yes, Pintex is a plant-based material which is made from pineapple leaf fibers. It's the waste of the pineapple harvest. And it can be used as an alternative to leather and petroleum-based textiles in the fashion industry, particularly footwear and accessories, but also in interiors and some in automotive industry. So it's a very versatile product using a waste from agriculture.
The ideas are incredible, and the implementation that they're out there in the world right now, I think, is super exciting. So please do go and check out each of these inventions. That being said, developing new solutions for established markets, because none of you have gone into markets that are brand new. You're not, you know, you're in there in the fashion sector. You're rivaling with other plastic and materials. Like, what did you need to consider in order to get your idea from something in your mind to something that people are going to accept, use, and make good use out of? Carmen, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think developing new solutions takes creativity, but also it needs to have a vision and a purpose. I think this is really very important as creators. You know, what is the purpose? And the purpose has to be for a better future for all of us, including the planet. And this is the way I created Piñatex, and this is the way Ananas and my company works. And this being said, having said this, the product has to be right for the market, right? Which market we have to know. Is our purpose aligned with what is needed in the market? This is really very important as well. Does it perform well? Is there a demand? Can we deliver? Key to me, and I think to the development of a new product, is partnerships. You know, how are we going to work with somebody else's? Are our values aligned as well? And I think these are really the main things that you have to look into bringing something into the market.
Great things to consider. Are your values aligned? Does the market want it? Laure, how do you work out if the market wants recycled shoes? Was that something you had to consider?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, I think the most important thing is to answer a demand and not to create a demand. In my case, I noticed that a lot of shoe brands were using natural or ecological materials, but not fully recycled. So it means that they needed to create materials or to take it from natural resources. The idea was really to use waste and not creating any materials to make a design and fashionable product. So I think the most important is really to study the market and to think, okay, is my product needed or am I creating a demand? We live like in a fast-consuming society where we buy too much, where we produce too much. Now I think we really need to create products that are needed.
So does the market want it? Are we creating a demand or finding a demand? Pierre, you went into a market, plastic, you know, you're rivaling plastic. So we know people want something plastic related, but it's so existing and people have cheap ways of currently accessing what they, you know, their requirements. So what did you need to consider in terms of bringing your solution to market?
I think in our case, and echoing what Carmen was saying, there is definitely this need to understand what the material can do. And I think we're not going to have a silver bullet. We're not going to find one material that's going to replace every single piece of plastic out there. So we need to be less lazy in the design phase and identify exactly the opportunities for specific materials. And in this case, I think natural materials have a huge role to play if we want to get out of like synthetic, kind of like indestructible materials, to really zoom in on those applications where it makes sense to have like such material used. So I think in our case, we're really looking at changing the behavior in places out of home where we know that there is the highest chance of littering, there is the lowest chance of collecting and be able to kind of like reuse those kind of like materials. And that's where we think that something as biodegradable as seaweed has a role to play. But we don't want to be working against all the other solutions, such as obviously like reducing packaging where it's not needed, but also reusing packaging where we have the systems in place and using certain materials for the right application.
So getting really specific about the actual pain point you're going to solve, rather than, Derek, like, there's a term we have in English, trying to boil the ocean, like seeing if you can solve all problems at once, but getting really clear on there's lots of different problems here. Which one do I really want to hone in on? So my next question's somewhat linked. There's lots of people with solutions, especially right now, the idea of circular economy, reusing, recycling, making better use of existing materials or natural materials has become quite popular. But many of those ideas don't make it out, like they just never get out into the world. So I'm really curious to understand what you think some of the success factors are that have been key to you being able to make your ideas work. Laure, I want to start with you. I mean, you launched your business very young, just before, well, in the middle of a pandemic. So what is it that you think really supported you in being able to get your shoes out into the market?
I think the project just came at the right time, like just after the pandemic. People started to think about their purchase, how to purchase better, how to purchase ethically. So it just came at that moment. There were some environmental consciousness, I think. So it came at the right moment, and also something that was super important for us was transparency. There is a lack of transparency from brands now, and we don't hide anything. And I think the consumer understood it. We tell everything about composition, sourcing, fabrication, everything. So I think transparency was the key in our case.
Being really, really super transparent about your values, not hiding behind them, putting that front and center of what you do and leaning into it, not having it as a secondary. This is what we're about. Pierre, what do you think's made it successful for you to get Nopla out into the market? What were your success criteria?
Well, I think it's a journey, and like the mission will be accomplished when we start having a dip on the overall global kind of like consumption of single-use plastic. So we are very, very far from having reached that scale. That being said, we are super excited to be well into this journey. I think it's all about kind of like finding the enablers for the next phase, and we need so many more alternative materials. We need so many more other startups and innovators, because we need that diversity. If you look at nature, not every, no fruit is exactly the same. You need a diversity so that we have a choice. And I think that in our case, what was really important is to get people excited about the thing we create. When we first put the videos out there, the fact that like people could see that you could eat your packaging, that was so different. It was not hiding behind some kind of bio-based or bioplastics. It was literally from the world of fruits and vegetables. So having something that really captures people's imagination, it's enabling you to be in that different category and then to get people behind it.
So being creative, being innovative, something, eat your, don't just eat your packaging as a completely different way of kind of throwing things out there. So having some sort of creative way of putting yourself into the market. Carmen, you are a finalist for European Inventor of the Year. So firstly, congratulations. But secondly, what do you think has been the key to your success in getting your solution out into the world?
Yes, that's really the key question. In a nutshell, we have a product that brings a solution, particularly to the fashion market, because Piñatex is the most sustainable plant-based material commercially available at scale today. And this is, as you were saying, it's really quite difficult for a small company to really bring something, up there, commercially available at scale. And this is really what we are working on very strongly at the moment. But also Piñatex is unique in the world, and so is the story of Piñatex. We have a strong vision and a purpose, which is to heal the relationship between people and planet. I think it's so important that you have a purpose, and this purpose has to be real and has to be needed as well. And people 100% relate to our purpose because, you know, it's real. And I think this is both things about Pinatex being unique and also the purpose is what makes us quite successful.
Because I'm really loving this conversation. But let's put it this way, the solutions you've all created are incredible and we need more solutions like this out there in the world. What do you think is the route to getting solutions, alternative solutions, a circular economy approach out into the world such that solutions like yours become the mainstream rather than a side thing that people are, you know, just ticking the like, look, I'm being eco-friendly box, but it becomes part of the fabric of how we do business. Pierre, how do we get more people eating their material? What do we need to do?
So I think there's a few elements. One which everyone can contribute is really calling out brands when you think that they are not doing the best they can, because I think over the past 5 years, we've seen a radical change in how important they now kind of like care, and like they are constantly their finger on the pulse of like reaction of consumers. And it does change the conversations, the nature of the conversation. So I think that the brands have a huge role to play in kind of like adopting and testing out those kind of alternatives and scaling them together. So I think we all have this opportunity to be a voice, to add up to that list of people who say, hey, I'm not satisfied with the products I'm able to purchase for the things that I want in my life. And I think the second one that is really encouraging is seeing that there is a lot of kind of like private capital that is being invested in innovations, that is also being invested in non-traditional solutions. So it's not just about recycling, it's not just about the old models, but like people who are willing to kind of take some risk and try to develop something that's going to really be able to change the system. So I think this combination is really helpful for nurturing more innovators, getting more chances for them to jump to the next phase.
So if you're watching, you've got an opportunity to help to make this shift if you go out and start to use your voice more broadly. But there's also a lot of funding available now for quite unique solutions too. Carmen, what about you? What are your plans to get Pinatex out to a wider group of people? What's needed such that this becomes something we're seeing as a regular material on our high streets?
Well, I think we are really working on it at the moment because what is needed is to make sure that we've got a supply chain that really responds to the demands of the market. And if I have to say is that there was no supply chain for Pinatex, we had to build everything. We work with farming communities. So we have to bring from the farming community knowledge, skills, relationships, you know, then into the textile industry when we do the finishing, and then into the product, you know, the product out into the market. So to build this and to build it in a way that is transparent and it really brings social and ecological responsibility, this is very, very important for us.
So it's a supply chain thing, and I think that's something that's
Yes.
that's worth being aware of. It's not just about having, you know, back to success factors. It's not just about having a great material, but it's got to be able to be produced consistently at scale, and that there's the same understanding and knowledge throughout the whole supply chain. So Laure, what about you? How do we get more fashionable recycled shoes?
Complicated question. I think like nowadays, big brands and multinationals are trying to integrate environmental and social values into their products, but this is purely greenwashing. I think it will become mainstream global when they will put environmental responsibility as a key priority instead of only profits, only benefits. As a young company with strong environmental values, I think what is the hardest is to keep the core values intact while making volume. Like in 9 months, we sold near than 4,000 pair of shoes, which is just incredible. But at the same time, I'm thinking, how can I keep these values that I try to implement at the beginning intact without compromising environment, without compromising people making the shoes, without neglecting human. So that's one of my biggest goals for the next years.
To be able to get something out without compromising values. You know what? We are fresh out of time. It's so frustrating because I was really thoroughly enjoying this conversation. Pierre, Carmen, Laure, thank you so much for joining us here today and for sharing your insights and wisdom. It's been an absolutely awesome session. Do stay with us here on Change Now for more. Go and have a look through the platform. There'll be more sessions available across the entire platform. And until next time, it's bye from me for now.